The story begins as the main character lies on the floor, beaten and battered. A giant figure looms over him, curling his fist to strike again. For our boy, violence was an everyday matter because he grew up getting beaten daily by a man who was supposed to be his father. Over time, violence became so natural it was just like breathing. We move to the present day as a guy holds the main character by his hair while a target is drawn on his face. He is terrified as he calls to another guy to wait while the other prepares to hit a rubber band at the target. Shaking, he asks the bully to hit him normally and pleads for mercy. Hearing this, the bully asks if he wants to break the agreement, reminding him that he signed up for this. He was Kim Sung-ho, a sexual assaulter sentenced to 2 years. He continues telling the main character about all the things he's done to make money. Shoveling snow for 301, warming up their shoes for 101, and even becoming their dog for a day for 201. So, being a human target for 501 should be easy for him. Finally succumbing to the pressure, the main character agrees to do it to get the money. This is the juvenile prison facility that accommodates juvenile criminals under the age of 19. In other words, it's a place where all the most atrocious teens of South Korea are. As the bully stretches the rubber band to hit him, he asks the main character to close his eyes so it won't pop out, relishing the power he holds as the main character stands there in fear. Suddenly, the rubber band snaps, and the 501 coin falls from the bully's hand, rolling into the toilet bowl. Annoyed, Kim asks his lackeys if there are any more rubber bands, but they reply that it's a rare commodity and they're out of it. Turning to the main character, Kim tells him he's lucky and orders him to pick up the coin. Grateful, the main character rushes toward the toilet to retrieve the 501, thanking Kim by calling him boss. As he reaches near, the bully suddenly stops him and commands him to pick up the coin with his mouth, saying it would be more amusing that way. Even the lackeys think this is going too far, as one comments that someone had diarrhea there the day before. But determined, the main character goes headfirst into the bowl and fishes out the coin. The thugs stand there, surprised that he actually did it. As the main character comes up with the coin in his mouth, they shame him for selling his soul for just 501. While another thug tells him to stay away because he stinks of feces. While they continue mocking him, the main character thinks that while they see just 501, for him, that money completes the 500,001 he has managed to collect in prison. Suddenly, another inmate comes in, telling Kim it's time for recreation. The bully leaves the room, telling the main character to come out slowly since he reeks. As they walk through the corridor, one inmate comments on how the main character has changed within a month, while another remarks on how he gave up his humanity for a little change, despite being in for attempted murder. His name is Cha Ju-young, our main character, currently serving 3 years in juvie for attempted murder. As they continue walking, the bully says that murder is nothing compared to money, while another inmate remains confused about Ju-young's obsession with it, speculating he might be in debt. Meanwhile, a prison guard comes to Ju-young's cell, informing him that he has a visitor. He walks to the visiting area, where a girl wearing a red scarf is waiting. Seeing him, she asks why he's so thin and whether he's not getting enough food. Ju-young denies this. This is De-yun, his childhood friend. She calls him an idiot and lectures him, saying she told him to make a good first impression by stabbing someone's eye so he'd gain respect in prison. She asks why he's visiting so much and tells him not to waste money like that. Irritated, she slams her hand on the window, asking if he thinks of her as a beggar. Holding a jar of coins, she questions how he managed to send her money. She tells him that even though she has no parents, she won't accept prison money. Taken aback, Ju-young asks why she brought the coin jar, but she ignores him and asks if he's doing this because of their promise to live together in Seoul after they graduate. She tells him she'll save money for that and asks him to take care of himself until he's out. Suddenly, the prison guard informs them that visiting time is over. As she stands to leave, she asks him to promise not to strain himself too much and just focus on getting out. Hearing the word promise, memories of that day flood Ju-young's mind. They were sitting on a hospital bench, and Ju-young apologized for what his father did to her. Bruised, De-yun snapped at him, saying it wasn't time to worry about her since his father was comatose after Ju-young hit him with a flower pot. And if he didn't wake up, Ju-young would be in serious trouble. Ju Young reassured her, saying his punishment wouldn't be too severe because of the domestic abuse he endured. However, the court sentenced him to 3 years. He wondered how he could be punished for fighting back once when his father put him through hell his entire life. Despite his frustration, Ju Young decided to comply with the law. As he was being taken away by the guards, De-yun told him to take care of himself, not miss any meals, and to tell her if anyone bothered him in prison. As she asked him to promise all of this, Ju Young just looked at her and left without saying anything. In prison, making trouble can get you more days added to your sentence, but if you become a model inmate, you can get out faster. With this in mind, Ju Young decided to be on his best behavior to shorten his 3-year sentence. In the present day, Ju Young is looking at a picture of him and De-yun together when the bully approaches him from behind, commenting on the photo. Ju Young quickly hides the picture, but it's too late. The bully asks if that's his girlfriend, and Ju Young replies with a no. Mocking his supposed one-sided relationship, the bully demands Ju Young's hand over the picture. Clearly, Ju Young has no intention of giving it up. Seeing Ju Young resist, the bully lifts his hand, asking if he needs a reminder of who's in charge. But before he can do anything, the guards interrupt, announcing that a new inmate is moving into the cell. The bully diverts his attention toward the fresh meat as a man slowly walks in, followed by a guard who pleads with the man not to cause trouble, warning that they'll be keeping an eye on him. As the inmates get a good look at the new guy's face, one of them recognizes him as Ma Jiam, the notorious teen who killed 7 delinquents at his school. Sentenced to 20 years, he holds the longest sentence in the juvenile facility. The room is filled with shock at the severity of his crime. However, the bully steps forward, mocking the others for being wusses and reminding them that, aside from the murders, they're all just as bad as Ma Jiam. Approaching Ma Jiam, the bully mocks his appearance, calling it the face of a killer, and tells him not to get cocky and to behave. I can't wait for him to beat the shit out of this guy. But Ma Jiam remains silent, completely ignoring the bully. Annoyed, the bully throws a punch, but Ma Jiam easily dodges it. Surprised by Ma's quick reflexes, everyone watches as Ma Jiam suddenly sprints toward the bully at full speed. In a shocking turn of events, contrary to everyone's expectations, the bully lands a solid punch on Ma Jiam's face, knocking him to the ground. As the bully stomps on Ma, he tells him to know his place, asserting that no matter what anyone's in for, everyone answers to him. Watching Ma Jiam, the one who seems so intimidating, get beaten down, the other inmates start branding him a loser. Despite the thrashing, Ma Jiam refuses to follow the bully's orders, and for that, he is ganged up on and beaten multiple times. Observing all this, Ju Young thinks Ma Jiam is being foolish, wondering where he learned to handle things so badly. Even a pig being sent to the butcher wouldn't be this dumb. The day passes, and as everyone is sleeping, Ju Young, lying next to Ma Jiam, whose face is swollen from the beatings, asks him if he's an idiot. Ju Young advises him to accept the bully as the king of the place and do whatever he says if he wants to live in peace. But Ma Jiam simply turns to Ju Young and asks, "Have you always lived so submissively?" before turning away and going to sleep. As Ju Young contemplates Ma Jiam's words, he reassures himself that his approach, keeping his head down and focusing on getting out, is the best way to survive. The next morning, we see De-yun standing on the side of the road, complaining about the cold weather. Thinking about how malnourished Ju Young is, she decides to pack him some food, even though he'll never admit to wanting it. Holding the lunchbox she's prepared for him, she starts to cross the road as the light turns green. Oh no, I have a bad feeling about this. As she reached the middle of the road, a truck came rushing, running the red light, hitting Yun, who now lay lifeless on the road as the food she made for Young lay scattered. Why, author? Why? The next day in the prison, as everyone woke up, a prison guard approached Young offering his condolences. Not knowing what this was for, he asked him what happened. The guard told Young that there was an accident near the prison where a truck hit a person and the person who died was Yun. Hearing her name, Young's heart sank as it suddenly weighed heavier than the truck. He sits silently in the gym, processing the news, when the bully comes in, asking why Ju Young didn't clean the bathroom. As the bully approaches, he notices Ju Young sitting there, holding the picture of him and De-yun. The bully snatches the picture from Ju Young, mocking him and asking what he's going to do now that his girlfriend is dead. Looking at the picture, the bully starts making vulgar comments about Yun, saying she was wasted on Ju Young. He holds the picture up, auctioning it off to the lackeys, starting at 501. The lackeys jump in, raising the bets, with one of them asking if they'd only be able to go on a date with her, to which the bully responds that if she were alive, he would have done much more than that. As the lackeys toy with Yun's name, Ma Jiam's words echo in Ju Young's mind. Ma Jiam, sitting in the corner, watches everything unfold. As the bully ends the auction, saying the picture is now limited edition, he decides to keep it for himself. Suddenly, a fist flies at the bully, punching the living shit out of him and sending him crashing to the ground. It's Ju Young. Seeing Ju Young punch the bully, everyone is shocked, even Ma Jiam. Watching this, Ma recalls the time when Ju Young told him about his father. How his dad, the right-hand man of a gang boss, beat him senseless every day. Ju Young couldn't do anything because he was his father. But the one time he couldn't sit still was when his father targeted his friend. After all the beatings from his father, the one good thing that came out of it was that Ju Young had learned how to fight. As the lackeys charge at Ju Young, he beats them all with a vengeance, sending them flying, leaving Ma speechless. Broken and battered, the bully crawls to Ju Young's feet, begging for mercy and offering money in exchange. But with a cold, dead look in his eyes, Ju Young punches him in the face again, saying that his reasons for holding back, wanting money, and being good, all of it ended with Yun's death because none of those needs exist anymore. I am already in tears after the first chapter. Follow my footsteps and become a gangster, a voice told Ju Young as he lay on the ground, battered. That was what his father told him every day. In the midst of the daily cycle of assault, his father would beat him up regularly, urging Ju Young to come at him stronger. Even at a young age, Ju Young couldn't look his father in the eyes properly. I have to become stronger, and until that day, I have this tattoo carved onto my body. I will pour all my aggression toward the dragon's eyes. As Ju Young stormed toward his father with eyes full of anger, his father commented on his newfound vigor. In the present day, the sound of the beating echoed throughout the prison as the guards scurried to find out what was going on. As one guard opened the cell door, he saw Ju Young standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by his fellow inmates, all beaten to a pulp. Bewildered, the guard asked Ju Young if he was responsible for the scene. With a cold expression, Ju Young turned to the guard and admitted it. Time passed, and Ju Young sat in a room alone, staring at the picture. Memories flooded his mind. Is your father crazy to beat his own son to a pulp before the first day of school? Yun asked furiously. She told Ju Young that his father should have been there to support him on his first day. Ju Young replied, saying that this wasn't the first time and it was no big deal. Furious and concerned for his safety, Yun told Ju Young that she would come to his house and talk to his father about it. Suddenly, Ju Young's face turned serious, and he reminded her of the promise she made not to visit his house. He warned her that if she broke the promise, she'd have to call him Appa for the rest of her life. Hearing this, Yun asked if Ju Young was mocking her for not having a home, causing him to stutter as he quickly clarified himself. Looking up at the sky, Yun said she planned to move to Seoul after graduation because she was sick of living in the orphanage and in a terrible neighborhood. She continued, I'm going to Seoul, graduate from a decent university, get a job at a major company, drive a foreign car, carry luxury bags, and live in an apartment with a view of the Han River. Hearing this, Ju Young called her too materialistic, as a look of sadness crept over his face, knowing that she'd leave him behind if she moved away. Still not finished, Yun told Ju Young that he was coming with her and made him promise. If he broke the promise, he'd have to call her Nuna for the rest of his life. As they were talking, a street photographer approached them, calling them a cute couple and offering to take a picture. This is the same picture Ju Young now keeps with him. We return to the prison as a sudden thud is heard from one of the rooms. It's Ju Young. He punched the wall, blaming himself for being in prison, which caused Yun to bring him food and led to her accident. As he continued punching the wall, Blood splattered from his fists onto the floor as he cried out in frustration. A guard approached the door, sympathizing with him and urging him to eat something, saying, "The living must go on living." But Ju Young wasn't paying attention. He fell to the ground, continuing to apologize to Yun. In the prison cafeteria, Ma Jiam was eating alongside other inmates when he overheard them talking about how Ju Young was sent to the punishment room for beating up everyone in his cell. They were having fun speculating about whether there was a new room leader after the incident. Suddenly, one guy stood up and approached them, grabbing one of the inmates by the face and slamming it into the table. He demanded they fill him in on the details. He was Park Jongchan, in prison for special assault. As he held the guy's head, Jongchan asked what they found amusing about the guy who rebelled and if they felt like taking him down too. Hearing this, his inmates, sweating balls, told him that they would never do such blasphemy against him. Jongchan smirked and asked his lackeys to get him the name of the troublemaker, as Ma Jiam watched everything unfold. A week passed, and a guard informed Ju Young that the bully he beat up was still in the hospital. He warned Ju Young not to cause any more trouble, as he was being released early because of his circumstances. Ju Young said nothing and walked back to his cell, where Ma Jiam and others were sitting. Seeing Ju Young, Ma noted that because of his actions, the other inmates wouldn't let him go scot-free. As the men closed in on Ju Young, their demeanor suddenly changed. They welcomed him into the cell, asking him to relax and rest, showered with compliments and favors. Seeing the drastic shift in demeanor, Ma Jiam thought to himself, at school, looks, parents, and money play a role, but in prison, strength is everything. Time passed, and we now see Ma Jiam standing by a fence with a book. Ju Young approached him, asking why Ma stopped him from killing the bully that day when Ma himself had killed 7 people. Hearing this, Ma thought about the incident in his life but was interrupted by Jongchan, who came looking for Ju Young. Jongchan commented that Ju Young was smaller than he expected and wondered how he was able to defeat the bully. Quickly dismissing the bully as a weakling, Jongchan asked Ju Young why he rebelled against his room leader and if he really wanted to take his spot. Annoyed, Ju Young told Jongchan to get lost and that he had no desire for such positions. Irritated by his tone, Jongchan kicked Ju Young in the stomach, saying that weaklings like him should know their place. As he grabbed Ju Young by the hair and lifted his hand to punch him, a guard noticed the fight but chose to walk away. Jongchan explained that room leaders could fight someone openly under the pretext of maintaining order, and no one would intervene. Jongchan slapped Ju Young across the face, but Ju Young did not retaliate. Slightly annoyed, Jongchan asked Ma why Ju Young wasn't fighting back, then threw him to the ground. As Ju Young lay there, Jongchan taunted him, saying that acting like a beaten dog wasn't fun. He raised his right hand, revealing a dragon tattoo on his arm, the same tattoo that Ju Young's father had. Seeing the tattoo, memories of his father came flooding back. Jongchan mocked Ju Young, taunting him about Yun's accident, and prepared to punch him when suddenly a boot landed on Jongchan's face, knocking him to the ground. In one swift move, Ju Young grabbed Jongchan's tattooed arm and dared him to repeat what he said. Confused by Ju Young's sudden change, Jongchan tried to threaten him, but Ju Young just kept pounding his head against the fence, demanding that he talk about Yun again. Holding Jongchan's arm with the dragon tattoo, Ju Young twisted it, breaking Jongchan's bones like twigs as he writhed in pain. As Jongchan lay motionless, Ju Young towered over him menacingly. The dragon tattoo that had haunted Ju Young since his childhood was now twisted and unrecognizable. 2 people stood on the side of the street, as one muttered to the other about Ju Young being the son of a gangster. The other person simply pitied him, remarking that he had been beaten by his father again. As they worried about the neighborhood getting worse by the day, Ju Young walked by, listening to everything but enduring it, as that was what he did best. As he reached his house, he proceeded to open the door when suddenly he heard a loud scream coming from inside. Recognizing the voice, he frantically opened the door and rushed in. There, he saw his father standing in the living room amidst broken furniture, with Yun lying unconscious on the floor. His father greeted Ju Young casually, asking if Yun was his friend. He explained how she barged into the house, confronting him about the way he treated Ju Young, telling him that he didn't deserve Ju Young as a son. With a sinister look, Ju Young's father said he took care of her for misbehaving. Hearing this, Ju Young was trembling with anger and rage, his fists clenching tightly. As he struggled to process his emotions, his father continued, warning him to keep Yun's mouth shut, or else he'd send her to meet her dead father. But before his father could finish his sentence, Ju Young grabbed a flower vase from the table and leapt onto his father's back, striking him hard on the head. He had finally snapped, unleashing all his pent-up anger as he continued to beat his father with everything he had. We cut to the hospital, where Ju Young's father lay in a coma. A doctor approached Ju Young, explaining that his father had suffered major injuries and that it would take a miracle for him to wake up. As Ju Young loomed over his father's body, he thought that this was what he needed for his life to move forward. Back in the prison, Ju Young stood over Jongchan, who lay motionless against the fence, as other prisoners gathered to witness the scene. One inmate remarked that Ju Young had finally lost his mind, doing this right after being released from solitary. As they discussed the situation, Ju Young's eyes remained fixed on the twisted dragon tattoo on Jongchan's hand. Suddenly, an announcement blared, ordering all inmates to return to their cells. As the crowd dispersed, upstairs in the staff building, a meeting was taking place. The officer in charge sipped tea, casually blaming the commotion on the hot-blooded youth in the prison. Across from him sat a man, listening intently. The officer expressed relief that the man was in good health after recently being released from the hospital, and assured him that they would do everything to make his stay comfortable. This man was Quan Changsik, the juvenile detention center's warden. The mood shifted as the warden, now serious, asked the man who he was there to meet. The man smirked in the shadows. Back in Ju Young's cell, the atmosphere was tense, with everyone sitting silently on the floor. Ma Jiam, holding a book and a pen, began writing about how he now believed he was sharing a room with a truly ridiculous guy. The silence was broken when a guard popped his head in, calling Ju Young's name, telling him he had a visitor. Ju Young was taken aback. He had no one left to visit him. Walking through the hallway, he pondered who it could be. His mother had run away when he was young, and he had cut off contact with his relatives. The guard surprised him by leading him into the warden's office. As Ju Young entered, there he saw a man sitting on the couch with crutches. It was his father, Sije Kangryong. Welcoming his son, Kangryong smiled, remarking how proud he was to see Ju Young pop off in the yard by beating up another inmate. Stunned by his father's return, Ju Young stood in silence. The warden approached him, explaining that his father had miraculously woken up in the hospital and asked Ju Young if he was happy that his father was all right. Ju Young stood there, remembering the doctor's words and trying to make sense of how his father had recovered. Breaking the silence, Kangryong spoke, saying that throughout his time as a gangster, the only person to bring him down wasn't the police or rival gangs. It was his own son. Tears welled up in his eyes as he told Ju Young how proud he was for doing what he did, calling it the correct way to live. Still not finished, he went on, telling Ju Young how much he loved him and that he'd do anything for him. But his expression turned sinister as he added that, for that to happen, he had to take care of the girl. A mortified Ju Young stood frozen as we flash back to the accident. Yun lay on the road, barely conscious, asking for help. Kangryong approached her, standing over her. He mocked what Yun had told him earlier, saying, "Parents will do anything for their children," before walking away, leaving her to die. Back in the warden's office, Kangryong continued his rant. He admitted that he had always thought of Ju Young as a loser who simply endured everything. But after witnessing what happened that day at the house, he realized Ju Young's potential. With a sly grin, Kangryong said that Yun was the key to unlocking Ju Young's true potential, which is why he killed her. As an eerie silence filled the room, the warden quickly jolted up, ordering the guards to restrain Ju Young. Filled with rage, Ju Young lunged at his father, his face cold with murderous intent. But before he could reach him, multiple needles pierced his back, stunning him to the ground. As the warden let out a sigh of relief, Ju Young writhed in pain on the floor, refusing to scream. Kangryong stood over him, asking if he wanted revenge. "Do you want to kill me?" he taunted. "If that's your goal, I'll tell you how to do it." Kangryong explained that several members of his organization were in the prison. Although they were rookies who had only recently gotten their tattoos, some would rise to become pillars of the gang. If Ju Young wanted to achieve his goal, he would have to prove himself by being the best among them and getting the gang to acknowledge him. If he succeeded, he could rise in rank and one day face his father, surpass him, and seize control of the heavenly dragons with his own hands. By doing so, Ju Young would accomplish what Kangryong never could, and his life as Ju Young's father would be complete because of it. "This guy is still trying to get what he wants out of our boy." As Kangryong finished his hour-long rant, he turned to the warden asking him to take care of his son. But suddenly, the cables shook as Ju Young forced himself to stand, enduring the pain. He lunged forward toward Kangryong, shouting that he wouldn't have to wait long to die, because Ju Young would kill him right then and there. As the guards and the warden stood stunned, Ju Young rushed toward Kangryong, his father's words echoing through his mind. Tired of his father's manipulative behavior, he lifted his hand, ready to strike him hard in the face. But before he could land the blow, a stranger stood tall beside Ju Young, placing a hand on his head. The stranger addressed him as "young master" and apologized for his rudeness before lifting him by the head and slamming him to the ground, completely ragdolling him. As Ju Young lay on the ground, the stranger remarked that bringing back the eldest, Hyung, was his job. Despite the brutal force exerted on him, Ju Young mustered all his strength, slowly standing back up. The stranger, surprised, thought to himself how Ju Young could withstand the power of the current acting boss of the Heavenly Dragons, even with his hands tied up. Kangryong walked over to Ju Young, calling him pitiful. He asked Ju Young to open his eyes and look around, explaining that with the sheer amount of power Kangryong held, Ju Young could never touch him. The only way Ju Young could ever challenge him would be by taking control of the prison. Lying there, clenching his fists in frustration at his helplessness, Ju Young listened as Kangryong bid him farewell, saying he looked forward to their next meeting. With that, Kangryong left the prison with his guards, leaving Ju Young alone to ponder the situation. As much as Ju Young hated to admit it, his father was right for once. Later, in the woodwork room, several inmates were busy doing their daily work. Among them was Ma Jiam, hammering nails into a piece of wood. A guard approached Ma, addressing him by his number, and suggested he take a break as he had already reached his goal for the day. Observing the interaction, some inmates commented on Ma's hammering form and wondered if that was how he bashed the bully's skull in. Another inmate remarked that Ma Jiam didn't even have the face of a murderer, calling him a loser. At that moment, a guy entered the room carrying a toolbox. He asked where to put it, and Ma, seeing him, asked him to place it on the shelf. But as the man came close to Ma, he deliberately dropped the toolbox, spilling sharp nails across the floor. Suspicious, Ma Jiam questioned the guy, who brushed it off as an accident, but Ma could sense something more sinister. The man then approached Ma and asked if he was really Ma Jiam, commenting that it had been a while since they saw each other after middle school. This new psycho's name was Yoon Gunman, imprisoned for robbery and arson. He continued, saying that he had seen Ma on the news, but was still surprised to see him in person. He asked Ma if he remembered him, to which Ma responded with a yes, calling him by name. Excited that Ma remembered him, Yoon said he had a question about the murders, wondering if Ma was really the guy who killed 7 men. He found it hard to believe that the good student he knew from high school could resort to such violence. Annoyed, Ma asked Yoon what he was implying. Yoon responded that he couldn't believe someone like Ma would do something like that. Their reunion was interrupted when a guard approached, telling them to stop talking and get back to work. As Yoon left, Ma glanced at his hand, which was now bloodied from gripping a nail in the wood too tightly. Later that night, in Ju Young's cell, he sat in a corner, replaying his father's conversation in his mind, unsure of where to begin or what to do next. The other guys in the cell were having their own conversation. One inmate complained about being hungry, while another grumbled about the prison food being comparable to grass. Another joked about filing a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, but someone else interrupted, saying that all he wanted was a slice of pizza. His cellmates laughed, mocking him for wishing for such a thing in prison. Hearing this, an idea popped into Ju Young's mind. He stood up as a guard walked past the window. Turning around, Ju Young called out to the guard, who asked what was wrong. The other inmates were shocked and nervous, unsure why Ju Young was suddenly talking to the prison guard. Calmly, Ju Young asked if they could order some pizza. Hearing the absurd request, the cellmates thought Ju Young had lost his mind. But the next moment, the whole cell was enjoying delicious pizzas, savoring the rare treat after so long. As they thanked Ju Young, he realized his theory was right. He was receiving special treatment because of his father. He decided to test the limits of his newfound power in the prison. As the cellmates munched on pizza, they speculated among themselves about Ju Young's identity, wondering if he was the heir to a major fortune or the son of a congressman. Ju Young, steeling his resolve, decided to use whatever advantage he could, even if it meant leveraging his father's name for his own goals of revenge. Suddenly, Ju Young noticed Ma Jiam sitting alone in the corner, not eating anything. When the others invited him to join in, another inmate remarked that Ma had been acting strange all day, as if something big had happened to him. The next day, while Ju Young and Ma were working together, a voice called out from behind, shouting that his hand slipped as a large tin of sharp nails fell onto Ma, piercing his body as he stood still, taking it all. It was Yoon Gun Min, who hurried over, sarcastically apologizing for his clumsiness. But Ma, knowing better than to fall for that shit, turned around to look at Yoon with a menacing gaze, asking him what his goal was, catching Yoon off guard. Suddenly, 3 other inmates approached, mocking Yoon, saying that Ma didn't seem like the underling Yoon had described. Towering over Ma, they asked Yoon if his story about Ma being the biggest killer in prison was true, because Ma seemed to be looking down on him. Slightly terrified, Yoon tried to put on a brave face, insisting that he never lied and that Ma had always sucked up to him since childhood. Turning to Ma, Yoon asked if he remembered the sweet memories they shared. Grabbing Ma's head, Yoon shoved it toward a sharp nail and asked if it jogged any memories. We flash back to the past, where a young Ma Jiam was begging Yoon to stop, standing covered in nails. Yoon, with a psychotic grin, demanded that Ma repeat himself, pretending he couldn't hear him. In front of a locker riddled with nails, Ma pleaded with Yoon to let him out, but Yoon just smirked and said the real fun was just beginning. He proceeded to hammer another nail into the locker while counting down from 3, as Ma, still inside, riddled in pain. Back in the present, Ma's face was dangerously close to the sharp nail as Yoon held his head down. The other inmates mocked Ma, commenting on how afraid he looked. Grabbing a handful of nails, Yoon swung his arm, declaring that Ma could never kill anyone. But suddenly, Ma grabbed Yoon's arm, causing the nails to fall. Everyone stood in shock as Ma looked Yoon dead in the eye and asked if he should teach him how to kill someone. Ma then offered to show him how it's done. As Yoon stood there stunned, Ma looked him in the eyes and asked if he wanted to learn how to kill someone. Now trembling, unsure of what to do, Yoon remained frozen in silence. Fortunately for him, a guard noticed the commotion and told them to get back to work as break time was over. Taking advantage of the situation, Yoon shoved Ma off of him as the other goons left, disappointed that they didn't get to see a fight. Walking with them, Yoon glanced back at Ma with an annoyed expression, thinking about how Ma was still as irritating as ever. In the cell, one guy asked who was more powerful, Jesus or Buddha. One person took Jesus' side while another chose Buddha. They argued and then stormed off to their religious duties for the day, leaving Yoon and Ma alone in the cell. After a moment of silence, Yoon spoke up, thanking Ma. Confused, Ma looked at him as Yoon expressed gratitude for stopping him from killing the bully, saying that if Ma hadn't intervened, Yoon would have spent 10 more years rotting away in prison. Ma commented on how Yoon's opinion had shifted, from complaining about that day to now thanking him. Yoon replied that he had important things to do after getting out. His revenge wasn't over. He still had to confront the person who killed his friend, his own father. Hearing this, Ma was shocked to learn that Yoon's father was no longer comatose and was out and about. Yoon brushed it off and thanked Ma again for stopping him. Slightly irritated, Ma asked if Yoon was mocking him for having a 20-year sentence, but Yoon simply corrected him, saying that wasn't the case and that he would surely repay his debt. The next day, in the woodworking room, the guard handed Ma the key, asking him to oversee things because something urgent had come up at his house. Sending the guard off, Ma turned around to the desk and noticed a moth lying there motionless, which triggered memories from his childhood with Yoon. Yoon, looking like a nerd, had shown off his collection of taxidermied insects to Ma. Their relationship didn't seem bad at this point. Seeing the insects, Ma had been taken aback, saying that he didn't like insects, especially moths and butterflies. Yoon made fun of Ma, calling him a scaredy cat for staying away from the bugs. Reflecting on the memory, Ma thought about how Yoon had been his first friend. Yoon wasn't very social, and the other students found him creepy, especially because of his obsession with collecting insects. One student had approached Yoon, asking if he collected the insects to eat them, suggesting that's where his protein came from. Despite Yoon's denials, the bullies didn't stop mocking him. When Ma came into the class and saw this, he quickly told the bullies to leave Yoon alone. Startled by Ma's authority as class rep, the bullies apologized and scurried away. Ma then asked Yoon if he was okay, and Yoon responded that it was fine, reminding Ma of their plans to meet at Yoon's house that evening. But suddenly, other students arrived and invited Ma to play soccer with them. It became clear that Ma and Yoon were growing apart. The next year, they were assigned to different classes. One day, when Ma went looking for Yoon, his desk was empty. Thinking Yoon had gone home, Ma was about to leave when he overheard two students talking about Yoon being targeted by bullies and dragged into the warehouse. Alarmed, Ma dropped his bag and sprinted toward the warehouse. Panting from running, Ma opened the warehouse door and saw several bullies inside. He called out for Yoon, but the bullies feigned ignorance. Then they told Ma to turn around. There stood Yoon with a sinister look on his face. Yoon shoved Ma into a nearby locker and locked it from the outside. The three bullies approached and commended Yoon for capturing Ma, while one commented that Yoon was a little crazy. They confronted Yoon about their deal, offering him a place in their crew in exchange for Yoon's most precious insect. They asked if Ma was that insect. Inside the locker, Ma shouted, asking Yoon why he was doing this. With a psychotic look, Yoon told Ma to calm down because when you catch an insect, you have to taxidermize it while it's still alive. Back in the present, a hand crushed the moth as Yoon explained to Ma that, just like moths and butterflies are both insects but one is hated and the other is liked, they were the same. Yoon blamed Ma for everything that had gone wrong in his life. Confused, Ma asked Yoon to explain, but Yoon erupted in anger, accusing Ma of being two-faced, pretending to be his friend while secretly planning to abandon and betray him. Stunned by this revelation, Ma listened as Yoon continued, claiming Ma saw Yoon as a moth and himself as a butterfly, beloved by everyone. Yoon said that realizing this made every day feel like living on the edge of a cliff. But hearing that the person who caused him this pain jumped off a cliff after killing 7 people made Yoon feel immense happiness, as he believed Ma deserved every bit of it. Ma, baffled by Yoon's delusions, clenched his fists, blood dripping onto the floor as he stepped closer to Yoon. Just as Ma began to speak, Yoon interrupted, saying that no matter what, Ma's life was ruined, and soon, whatever was left would be gone. Suddenly, the 3 goons grabbed Ma from behind, pinning him down. One of them remarked that Yoon was crazier than they'd thought. With a sinister smile, Yoon told Ma that he had to taxidermize the insect while it was still alive. As the goons shoved Ma into a locker, Yoon closed the door, repeating that it was all Ma's fault. Inside the locker, Ma asked if Yoon really thought he would fall for the same trick twice. But Yoon told him to look at the floor, where his insect friends were crawling as a parting gift. As the bugs crawled over Ma's body, Yoon waited outside, expecting to hear screams, but was surprised when there was only silence. Inside, Ma, terrified by the insects, forced himself to stay silent, refusing to let out a sound. The goons outside mocked Ma for holding in the scream, and one asked Yoon if he was sure this was a good idea, since Ma was in prison for murder and was dangerous. Yoon, the crazy bastard, just laughed it off, saying it didn't matter and urged them to listen for the scream. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the room as Young entered the scene. Walking through the middle, Young asked how they expected to make Ma scream. The goons were caught off guard by Young's sudden appearance. Ignoring their confusion, Young grabbed one guy and twisted his shoulder, causing him to scream in pain. Another rushed at Young, but a swift kick to the face sent him flying into a locker, cracking it. As everyone stood in shock, Young turned to Ma and asked if he remembered how he had promised to repay his debt. With that, they were even. All the cellmates were sitting on the floor talking when one of them asked where Ma Jae-im was. Another guy replied that the supervisor had called him to clean the woodwork room. A third inmate questioned why that would happen so late at night. Jo Young, who had been sitting in the corner listening quietly, stood up and moved toward the window. He called the officer on duty over to him. The officer, surprised that Young was calling him again, joked, "Want to order pizza again?" Hearing this, the other cellmates started drooling, imagining the delicious feast. But, shattering their hopes, Young asked the guard to open the door, leaving everyone stunned. Fast forward to the present. Young stood above one of the goons, telling Ma Jae-im that with this, his debts were paid in full. Seeing the carnage around him, the big guy stepped forward, asking if Young was the infamous troublemaker who had been stirring up problems in the prison. He remarked that since Young had come to save Ma, they must be very close. Yoon, who had been watching from the side, sarcastically mocked Ma, saying it must be nice to have such a good friend. "I wish I had one," he sneered. The big guy, clenching his fists, said that Young had an attitude and raised his fist to punch him, asking if Young wanted to be friends too. This was not going to end well. In a swift move, Young sidestepped and grabbed the big guy by the neck, slamming him to the ground with great force. Standing over him, Young coldly said, "I'd rather die than be friends with you." Turning to Yoon, who was now frozen in terror, Young asked why he was doing all this and warned him that he was crossing a line. Hearing this, Yoon started to panic. He accused Ma of ruining his life by pretending to be his friend while secretly trying to drag him down. "He's like a snake," Yoon hissed, "pretending to care but ready to kill me behind my back." Yoon then turned to Young, warning him to watch his back around Ma Jae-im. Suddenly, the big guy came from behind and wrapped his massive arms around Young's neck, choking him. As Young struggled to breathe, Yoon taunted, telling the big guy to crush Young's head while mocking him. With an arm around his neck and the grip tightening, Young tried to free himself. Realizing brute force wouldn't work, he grabbed one of the big guy's fingers and snapped it in an instant, saying, "You won't be using this again." As the big guy's grip loosened, Yoon ran at Young with a knife, stabbing him in the stomach. As Yoon savored the moment of victory, the big guy thanked Yoon for the assist, calling him a true friend. Young, now bleeding and struggling to stay conscious, was about to pass out when Ma Jae-im appeared behind the big guy, a heavy chain wrapped around his neck, ready to snap it. Seeing Ma out of his cell, Yoon's frustration boiled over. Taking advantage of the distraction, Young slipped from the big guy's grasp and landed a solid kick to Yoon's face, sending him crashing to the ground. The big guy, chain still around his neck, taunted Ma with his strength, pulling the chain forward with his neck. Unable to stabilize himself, Ma was dragged forward as Yoon cheered for the big guy to keep pulling. But in a sudden twist, Ma lifted his leg, placed it on the big guy's head, and growled, "Stop, or I'll snap your skull in half." The chain tightened around the big guy's neck, cutting into his flesh as blood seeped through. Finally, the big guy collapsed unconscious, while Ma, exhausted from the fight, stood panting. As Young surveyed the fallen big guy, Ma turned his attention to Yoon. Slowly, he approached him. Yoon, now trembling, backed away, rambling about how he was the real victim in all of this, trying to make one last pathetic plea. He stumbled to the ground, begging Ma to spare him, calling himself a stupid loser, but Ma cut him off. "I never saw you as a loser," Ma said, surprising Yoon. "What you did hasn't changed my life. I've already killed 7 people and I thought about doing the same to you. But in the end, I couldn't bring myself to do it." Maybe I don't hate you enough because we were friends once. Ma walked past him and Yoon reflected on his words. Friends, he thought bitterly. What a load of bullshit. His face twisted into a wicked grin as he called Ma a pushover in his mind, vowing to pay him back twofold. But before he could act, a foot smashed into Yoon's face, sending him flying across the room. It was Young. Looking at Ma, Young said, "Call it even now." Back in the cell, both Ma and Young sat on the ground, chatting. Young turned to Ma and asked, "Are you a dumbass?" Confused, Ma asked what he was talking about. Young smirked. "Why? After killing 7 people, are you scared of an idiot like Yoon?" Annoyed, Ma shot back, "I wasn't scared." With a grin, Young turned away, saying, "I don't know what kind of relationship you had with Yoon, but I'm glad you didn't consider him an enemy in the end." Ma smiled slightly. We flash back to the present, with Young clutching his stab wound and asking Ma why he was still there. Ma called out, thanking Young for helping him, but Young brushed it off with a smile. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed through the room. Turning around, they saw a man squatting in front of the unconscious Yoon. The strange guy asked Yoon why he had left the room without permission and said he was scared to be alone. He smashed Yoon's already unconscious face, complaining about a cockroach in his cell that had splattered all over him. As he continued to hit Yoon, the strange guy rambled about how filthy the cockroach was and how unbearable the germs were. In a bizarre move, he grabbed Young's shirt and started rubbing it on his face, trying to clean himself. After he finished, he looked at Young and, with a sinister smile, asked, "Is my face clean now?" As Young, caught off guard, was stunned by what he saw, the crazy guy repeated, asking if his face was clean. As he waited for an answer, Young looked him dead in the eyes, answering him with a no, and telling him it was the filthiest face he'd ever seen. Ma, on the side, stood stunned by the answer, while the crazy guy asked him to repeat what he just said. Going into a panic, the crazy guy lashed out at Young, raising his hand to punch him in the face. But interrupting them, the door opened, and a guard asked them to go to their rooms if their work was done there. As Young stood there motionless, the crazy guy leaned in, continuously repeating Young's ID number, written on his shirt with a psychotic look. The incident ended without much violence, and now we see Young sitting on the ground, asking what the problem was, as all his cellmates sat around him, guarding all sides. Young asked why they were doing this when one of the guys called Gu Namin told Young how he became crazy famous after the fight in the yard and how, when they were with Young, no one picked a fight with them. Sitting beside Young, Ma, slightly annoyed, asked what he had to do with that. But Young, ignoring them, told them to do whatever they wanted, as he had more important things to do. A blue dragon adorned with red flowers, aka Red Flower Dragon, the dragon symbol echoed in his mind, and he needed to find the guys with that tattoo. But where could the lackeys of the organization be? Seeing Young lost in thought, Gu asked Young what he was looking for, to which Young replied that he was looking for someone. Proudly pointing at himself, Gu offered Young his help, saying that he was known as the infobroker of the prison. His face turning serious, Young told him about the tattoo. "A filthy tattoo, that's what I want." The sun slowly set on the horizon as everyone gathered in the community hall to watch TV. It was the news like every other day. The news anchor went on about the increase in gang violence and extortion in society, explaining how it was increasing especially among students. Scoffing at the criminals, Young said out loud that the criminals should rot in jail to learn their lessons. As he said that, a figure standing, leaning on the door, disagreed, telling him that it wasn't just bad guys who end up in prison, and then proceeded to tell them his story. "Once upon a time, there was a legendary tekkbokki place in our neighborhood. I was a regular. The chewiness of the rice cakes and the harmony of the sauce were on another level. Famous tekkbokki. But one day, the local congressman's son, a crazy guy who acted like a thug because of his father's influence, showed up. As he ordered the food, he sat at the table eating it. As he took his first bite, his face twisted in anger, and he cursed because it was rice cake tekkbokki. Immediately rising up, he and his goon began thrashing the place, saying that flour cakes were the superior ones. But right at that moment I showed up, the leader of the rice cake gang. Okay, I appreciate the act, but that's just a lame name. An insane fight broke out, and I came out victorious and took the title of protector of rice cakes. He continued saying he had no regrets, even if the congressman used his connections to throw him in jail. Hearing the stupid story, everyone started to make fun of Gu, telling Young that Gu was called the Gulls Hitter because he lied so much. He was beaten up in his other room, but he still hadn't gotten the point. Gu Namin, hearing all this, smiled, ensuring that all his stories were legit. As everyone continued to ignore his story, Young looked on. Suddenly speaking up, he told everyone that he didn't think Gu was lying. Hearing this, Gu was taken aback. Aphids provide ants with sugar, and the ants protect the aphids. Almost like my relationship with the bullies. The weasel next to the bully. Having lived my whole life like that, I could tell that Juyun, the boss of the group, liked me. Gu Namin chuckled as he thought that if he could curry favor with our boy, his life there would be a breeze. As he was fantasizing about the happy times while he was gardening out in the yard, an ominous shadow appeared above him. Turning around, Gu saw the crazy guy standing tall with mud on his face, looking down and asking what it was that smelled. This was his previous room leader. The crazy dude screamed about how the germs and bacteria were now on his face because of the mud Gu splattered. Scared out of his mind, standing before the crazy OCD demon in front of him, Gu apologized, telling him it was an accident. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be enough. Looking at Gu, the crazy guy asked if he was clean now, to which Gu replied, shivering, that he was completely spotless. Putting an insecticide bottle to Gu's face, the guy told him that he would forgive him just once as he sprayed the bottle straight at Gu. Screaming as the insecticide got into his eyes, Gu frantically cried out loud and went to rinse it off with water. Standing unbothered, the guy asked Gu for a favor. Gu looked up in confusion as the crazy guy recited 7199, Young's ID number, over and over again, asking if he was Young's roommate. Hearing the number, Gu thought about Young, when the crazy guy, scratching his face, complained about how Young called him filthy after all the effort he put into staying clean. Gu, pissing his pants, seeing the crazy antics, agreed to what the guy said when he came close, asking Gu to help him with the disinfection. He held the insecticide as the dragon tattoo was visible through his open shirt. Back in the cell, Young was doing one-finger push-ups, almost about to complete his 100th rep. As he did it, his mind was still occupied with the dragon tattoo as he thought about ways to find them. As he was lost in thought, Gu approached him, commenting on Young's form, and asked if he worked out before coming there. Handing Young a glass of drink, Gu asked him to take a break so that he could go back to working out with twice the strength. Agreeing to this, Young stood up from the ground and picked up the glass as he thanked Gu for the gesture. But the moment he looked at the drink, he knew something was wrong. Young, now with a serious voice, turned to Gu, asking him where he got the drink from, holding the glass with a menacing look. The room filled with a thick, eerie atmosphere as Gu was forcefully held down by several inmates, a funnel jammed into his mouth. He struggled to breathe as a crazed man loomed over him, screaming, "Why did you do it, Gu? Why?" The man's eyes burned red with rage, his voice echoing in the damp walls of the cell. Gu's chest heaved with terror, barely able to comprehend the situation as the madman declared that Gu's lies had tainted him, making him filthy. "You're dirty, Gu. Your mouth made me dirty, and now it needs to be cleaned." With a chilling grin, the man grabbed a bottle of disinfectant, tilting it over the funnel as Gu's wide eyes watched in horror. The liquid poured into Gu's throat, burning its way down. The bottle slipped from the man's hand, hitting the floor with a sharp clang. Panicking, the man kneeled to clean the spilled liquid while Gu lay convulsing, foaming at the mouth. As his vision blurred, Gu's thoughts wandered back to his previous cell, a place he had once called hell. He remembered the demon who had resided there. Suddenly, he snapped back to the present as another inmate. Young, with a furious expression, demanded, "Who gave you this drink?" Young's eyes flicked to the toxic concoction in his hand. Gu's heart raced. He threw his hands up defensively, trying to lie his way out. I bought it myself, he stammered, knowing full well his deceit would unravel. The other inmates, hearing the commotion, circled around, suspicion growing in their eyes. They demanded Gu prove his innocence by drinking the toxic beverage himself. As sweat dripped down his face, Gu's mind raced. He wondered if Young suspected him too. He knew his reputation as the prison's biggest liar worked against him. But before he could respond, Young surprised everyone. Without hesitation, Young gulped down the entire drink in one go. Gu watched in shock, his heart pounding in his chest. Young wiped his mouth and, to Gu's amazement, said, "Not bad. Thanks for the drink." He casually walked away, reminding everyone that tomorrow was group cleanup day. Gu stood frozen, his mind spinning. If he had known Young would drink it without hesitation, he would have poisoned him right then and there. A wave of guilt swept over him as he recalled moments where Young had supported him despite his lies. As night fell, the inmates made their beds, preparing for sleep. Young sat at the edge of his, a paper and pen in hand, sketching out a detailed image of a dragon tattoo. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, Gu approached him. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Without looking up, Young explained, "It's a blue dragon, adorned with red flowers. Anyone think the dragon looks like Kadu? Just me?" Anyways, while talking to Young, Gu thought of his next plan on how to hide the fact that he drugged Young from everyone else. Gu's mind whirled with thoughts of how to outwit Young. He decided to observe Young's routines, searching for the perfect opportunity to drug him. But his curiosity got the best of him, and he blurted out, "Why do you trust me so much?" In his head, Gu was confused by the whole situation. He was the last person anyone should trust. "I'm a liar, Young. I'm the first person you should suspect." Young finally looked up, a sly smile on his face. "Lying is a smart trait, Gu. I like smart people. And a smart guy like you wouldn't make an enemy out of me, would he?" The words left Gu speechless. Young got up, announcing to the cell that he was turning the lights off. "Go to sleep, Gu," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. The next morning, the guards ordered everyone to clean the corridors thoroughly for an upcoming visit from the Minister of Justice. The inmates scrubbed furiously, but Gu's mind was elsewhere. The crazy man from before approached him, reminding him of their deal. "You promised to disinfect Young. Are you backing out?" he growled. Gu, feeling the pressure, tried to explain, "Young's sorry. He's really sorry for calling you dirty. He's just introverted. So he sent me to apologize on his behalf." But the man wasn't buying it. He saw through Gu's lies and delivered a brutal punch to his stomach. Gu flew into the wall, lying motionless as the man advanced, muttering about how he could never forgive Young. With another vicious kick to Gu's head, the man slammed him into a urinal. The cold water splashed onto Gu's face as he gasped for air, suffocating. Gurgling in the filthy water, Gu feared for his life, convinced that this was how he would die. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" The crazy man turned to see Young standing there, his expression unreadable. Relief flooded Gu's body as he asked weakly, "Why are you so late?" Back in the corridor, Gu approached Young with a serious face. "Someone's threatening me," he confessed, showing him the pesticide bottle. "He wanted me to poison you, but I couldn't betray my friend." With that, Gu poured the bottle's contents onto the floor in front of Young. "I'm ready to face the consequences," he declared, turning to walk away. But before leaving, he added, "By the way, the crazy guy with the dragon tattoo you're looking for? He has one." Young stood still, absorbing the information. Gu smirked to himself as he walked away, thinking, maybe I am as smart as Young says I am. In the present, Young got his hands dirty as the crazy man with the tattoo stared at him, eyes wide with madness. Without hesitation, Young grabbed him by the shirt, wiping his hands clean on the man's clothes. Being too clever is a problem too, Young muttered. The man went berserk, screaming about purging the germs from his body. But before he could act, Young slammed him to the ground with a single brutal move. You're too loud, he said calmly, standing over the man. Seeing the dragon tattoo on the man's chest, Young cracked his knuckles. Now I can beat you without regret, he said, his voice icy with intent. Gu watched, a twisted sense of satisfaction growing inside him as Young prepared to deliver his punishment. There was once a promising rising star in martial arts. His signature move was to grapple his opponent by the abdomen, squeezing as if about to make them burst. But in reality, it was a dirty tactic. He trapped his opponent's hands so they couldn't tap out. After one fateful day, no one ever saw that move again. As the opponent's eyes widened in pain, he pulled desperately on the other man as the match ended. The rising star who had used that move was soon diagnosed with an unexpected weakness for a grappler: germophobia. In the present, a man named Young sat atop a boxer, calling out to him, demanding answers and mockingly addressing him as a germaphobe. Looking straight into his eyes, Young pressed him to reveal everything he knew about the heavenly dragon. But the boxer wasn't paying attention. Instead, he kept complaining about the bathroom floor being covered in germs. With a sudden burst of energy, the boxer leaped to his feet and lunged at Young, ready to deliver a two-handed punch while reciting the names of microbes non-stop. But Young, unbothered, dodged the attack easily and slapped the boxer across the face, sending him crashing to the ground for the nth time. He taunted the boxer again, asking if he was still worried about the germs. Watching from behind the door, Gunamin felt a wave of relief wash over him as he saw Young swatting the boxer away like a fly. Gu was thankful he had put all his trust in Young. The boxer, now lying on the filthy bathroom floor, kept repeating Young's ID number, threatening to kill him. Tired of hearing the same threats over and over, Young looked down at him and remarked that he wasn't a fan of the dirty floor either. But since the boxer wasn't cooperating, he'd have to resort to shock therapy. He dipped his hands into the grimy water from a urinal and menacingly asked the boxer to open his mouth. The boxer's eyes widened in horror. Suddenly, memories flooded the boxer's mind. We see a younger version of him standing in the locker room, frantically trying to wash off sweat, muttering about how dirty it felt. He opened a locker door, but to his surprise, a pile of trash fell straight onto him. Horrified, he stood frozen as a menacing figure stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar, slamming him to the ground. The man sat on top of him, asking mockingly if the rumors about his germophobia were true. The boxer didn't fight back, and the man, realizing the rumors were true, sneered. Looking at the trash on the floor, the man cursed the boxer for humiliating him in the ring, saying it had caused him to puke in front of millions of people. With anger boiling over, he forced the boxer's mouth open with one hand while holding a dirty rag in the other. The boxer, overwhelmed with terror, had a mental breakdown, repeating the word dirty over and over again. Adrenaline surged through the boxer, and with newfound strength, he broke free, pushing the hooded man away in surprise. Back in the present, Young's face showed a similar look of surprise. The boxer, once again fueled by rage, grabbed Young's arm, flipped him over, and pushed him to the ground. His face twisted into a crazed grin. The boxer screamed that he would kill anyone who made him dirty. He wrapped his legs around Young's waist and pulled his signature move on him. Young screamed in pain, helpless as his hands were immobilized. Gu, watching from the stall, began to panic, debating whether he should intervene to save Young. Just as Gu was about to make a decision, Young, still struggling, muttered something that surprised everyone. The boxer's move reminded Young of his past. As a child, his father never hugged him, except when he was teaching him how to fight. His father would squeeze him so tightly that it felt like his bones were breaking. So what the boxer was doing now? It was nothing new to Young. In a swift motion, Young twisted the boxer's hand, switching their positions and slamming him to the ground. He cursed the boxer for forcing him to remember his painful past. But that past made him resilient. He was used to fighting on bare ground and even worse situations. A loud snap echoed as the boxer's spine cracked. Writhing in pain, the boxer's eyes bulged out in terror. Young, with a sinister grin, asked whether it would be the boxer's body or his spirit that broke first. He squeezed tighter, pushing the boxer closer to agony. The boxer tapped frantically, but Young just smiled. "Did you really think this was a fight in the ring?" Young sneered. "Nobody ever taught me about tapping out in life. It's always to the end." The boxer, filled with pure terror, could do nothing as Young's grip tightened. Outside, the cleaning staff continued their work, unaware of the brutal struggle unfolding inside. Meanwhile, Gu held a funnel over the boxer's mouth, who was barely conscious and struggling to breathe. Gu sighed, asking Young why people of the same species had such a hard time understanding simple instructions. With a grin, Gu suggested that maybe the shock therapy wasn't enough. Young, exasperated, put his hand on his head and sighed deeply. Grabbing his pants and pulling them down, he said, "It's come to this, huh?" The boxer's eyes widened in shock as Young pulled out his lightsaber. Gu held on to the boxer tightly as the boxer continued to resist. With a sinister smile, Gu asked the boxer to open wide to make space for the lemon juice. Hearing this, the boxer's pupils shrank in utter terror. Young, looking at him menacingly, wondered what it would taste like. The boxer, now at his wit's end, finally admitted that he would talk. Gu, removing the funnel from the boxer's mouth, encouraged his decision while Young told him to start talking. Leaning into the boxer's face, Young warned him not to leave out any details when explaining about the heavenly dragons. In a dimly lit room, a lady explained the process of tattooing by piercing the dermal layer with a needle. Holding the needle in her hand, she reassured the newcomer that it was sterile, as the newcomer had severe OCD. We see the boxer lying in bed with a piece of cloth in his mouth as a beautiful woman sat beside him, tattooing his chest and promising to make it look pretty. The heavenly dragon, the beauty continued, asking the boxer if he knew why such a big organization accepted a minor like him. As we see the tattoo of a dragon, she explained that the dragon stood for power and strength, while the flower represented vitality and liveliness. However, no matter how beautiful the flower, it is inevitable that it will wither and fall. As she continued tattooing, she told him he was part of the next generation of heavenly dragons, calling him one of the young seedlings that would bloom into a beautiful flower. Underage kids, she explained, are full of power and potential that adults do not have. Depending on the situations they encounter or the experiences they face, they can grow explosively. That's why the group quickly recruits young talents and nurtures them in its garden. She glanced at a wall adorned with a giant dragon and explained that these flowers would bloom into full members of the heavenly dragons. As the boxer listened, we returned to the present, where he begged Young to let him go after revealing everything. Hearing this, everything started clicking into place for Young. The reason why the person he called father raised him in such a brutal way, training him to death since childhood, was to make him bloom into one of the heavenly dragon's flowers faster than anyone else. As Young stood silently, not responding, Gu called out to him, concerned. The boxer, still lying on the ground, grew curious and asked Young why he was inquiring about the group, wondering if Young also wanted to join the Heavenly Dragons. Hearing this, Young was shocked. With a psychotic laugh, the boxer assumed he had figured it all out, asking if Young was keeping him in check because 7199 desperately wanted to enter the Heavenly Dragons gang. Continuing, the boxer said he would recommend Young's name to the boss if Young wanted to join. Annoyed, Young's veins popped out in frustration. With a swift motion, Young grabbed the boxer's throat. The boxer, stunned and confused, asked why Young did that when he had already told him everything. Raising his hand, Young told the boxer to shut his mouth and struck his face, saying he didn't need much reason to do so. As the interrogation outside concluded, Young wrapped everything up and they moved to join the others. Scrubbing the floor, Young complained about the dirt not coming off. As he mentioned disinfectant, Gu suddenly appeared out of nowhere with a bottle, kneeling and offering it to Young. Young, looking back, asked Gu why he was acting that way. Gu simply thanked him. Still confused, Young listened as Gu explained that since Young had taken care of the OCD boxer, he had been able to sleep well ever since. Correcting Gu, Young said he didn't kill anyone, then asked Gu about the time the OCD boxer had tortured him by pouring disinfectant down his throat. Out of curiosity, Young asked how Gu had survived such an ordeal, as most people would have died from that. Taken aback, Gu explained that he had even foamed at the mouth, but he had switched the disinfectant with soapy water beforehand. Proudly, Gu pointed at himself and explained that he had set everything up so that he could finally be moved to another room, away from the boxer. Even now, Gu said just thinking about the boxer gave him chills. Hearing all this, Young stood there dumbfounded. Coming back to his senses, Young told Gu not to thank him, saying that since the boxer had the dragon tattoo, he would have dealt with him anyway. Picking up on the mention of the tattoo, Gu asked why Young was looking for the Heavenly Dragons. In a serious tone, Young explained his desire to beat every one of them up. Gu remarked that it didn't sound like Young to do that. Shifting the topic, Young asked if Gu had any idea how to find the rest of the guys with the tattoo. Agreeing that it would be a tough job since many people in the prison had tattoos, Gu asked if there was anything common among the gang members. Thinking for a while, Young had a revelation. The members he had met so far were all room leaders. Putting his hand on his chin, Young decided to start looking for the heads of the rooms. But Gu cut him off, saying it wasn't necessary since next week was the time when all the room leaders would gather for a meeting. Surprised, Young asked about the meeting. Gu, a little taken aback, was surprised Young didn't know about it. He explained, every quarter, the heads of each room come together for a friendly discussion, or at least that's what it looks like on the surface. But in reality, it's where they talk about various illegal topics. Leaning in closer, Gu described it as an illegal cartel, to which Young told him to back off. Satisfied with the information, Young decided to go to the head meeting. Gu, putting his hands on Young's shoulders, seriously warned him to be careful, as this was the juvenile prison, the place for the worst criminals in the nation. And this meeting was where the most dangerous inmates gathered. So Gu advised Young not to do anything to stand out. Too late for that. At the juvenile prison heads meeting, several room leaders gathered in one room. A white-haired man, sitting with his tongue out, talked about the incident with Zhang and the OCD boxer, calling it crazy. As we see the dragon tattoo on his neck, he talked about how both of them were taken out by a single guy called Cha Ju-young. Turning to another guy, he asked if he was interested. We see a man, his head down, looking at his hands as he declined the offer. A third guy, sitting nearby, scoffed and said they should beat up the guy who acted out and put him in his place. A fourth man, holding a Bible and a rosary, asked the third guy, whom he called Hyung Jae, to keep quiet, saying it was the Lord's wish. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and sunlight streamed into the room. Holding a stick, Young made a grand entrance, breaking the stick and saying it was surprisingly easy to find them, even though it took some effort. As everyone stared at him in shock, Young rushed toward one of the guys with the broken stick. Pointing the piece at his neck, he demanded he repeat what he had just said. It was now daytime as we saw inmates working in the yard, digging the ground with shovels while one man encouraged them to work hard. Behind a pile of sand in the shade, Gu told Ma Jiam about how Young was going to attend the leaders' meeting. Gu asked Ma to give Young some encouraging words while Ma and Young sat there, listening to him. Ma leaned forward, confused, and asked what the leaders' meeting actually was. Young seconded, admitting that he still didn't know the details either. Gu chimed in and started explaining. It's an exchange meeting between cell leaders, directly approved by the warden. It's a dangerous place where illegal trades and information are shared. These aren't just local thugs. The scale is comparable to massive criminal organizations. Ma Jiam, hearing this, turned to Young and casually told him to have a good meeting and to be careful. Hearing the nonchalant reply, Gu asked Ma to put more effort into his response. Turning to Young, Gu repeated that the place was filled with many dangerous people and urged Young not to make any unnecessary trouble while he was there, no matter what. Back in the present, the leader stood stunned as Young asked the guy what he had said about the seeds. As the man looked at Young, surprised, Young, pointing the stick at the guy's throat, told him he would dry up all the seeds in the prison. Watching Young's actions, everyone in the room wondered if he had gone crazy. Still pointing the stick at the guy's throat, Young challenged him to come at him. The guy, smiling, told Young that he wasn't interested. Young, confused, listened as the guy explained that the leaders only fought under the pretext of maintaining order. He asked if Young was taking advantage of that rule. But Young had apparently missed the most important part. The guy continued, explaining that in all of Young's previous fights, there had likely been justifiable reasons to accept them. Smiling, the guy said that justification was the most important factor. But in this fight, there was no reason or justification to engage with Young. So, if Young insisted on fighting and disrupting the order of the prison despite this, all the other leaders would turn against him, and he wouldn't leave the room alive. Closing his eyes with a sly smile, the guy asked if Young still wanted to stab him. Realizing that reckless fights and unreasonable violence would turn the whole prison against him, making it impossible to leave alive, let alone control the place. Young backed off, but it helped him confirm his suspicions. Standing up and leaning over to Young, the guy asked if Young was done with his facade and whether he was really planning on stabbing him. Moving past Young, the guy noted that from his actions, it seemed Young was hostile toward the Heavenly Dragon Gang. He told Young he needed to learn his place before walking away. As the commotion settled down, a man with glasses, holding a book, called for everyone's attention to start the leaders' meeting. First, he addressed the absence of 3 room leaders, who all missed the meeting due to injuries caused by Young. Everyone listened seriously as the man with the rosary prayed for the injured. The man with glasses introduced Ju Young as the cause of all the incidents and the new room leader of Cell 36. As all eyes fell on Young again, one guy commented on how good Young looked, while another wondered which gang Young was from. Young carefully observed the situation, noting that there were 15 cell leaders gathered there. At first glance, he couldn't see anyone with the dragon tattoo except for the guy he confronted earlier. Breaking the chatter, the man with glasses addressed Young, asking if he wanted to say anything as the new room leader. Thinking for a moment, Young smiled and sarcastically asked what the big deal was about becoming a room leader, adding that he was looking forward to it. Hearing his nonchalant attitude, one guy got pissed off, crushing the glass he was holding. But the man with glasses ignored the outburst and moved on to the next item on the agenda. The income sources controlled by the cell leaders within the prison, also known as shops. A portion of the profits from these shops is handed over to the warden. But one person didn't pay this quarter's tribute, he said. Turning to the guy from before, he called him Park Do-won, who controlled the gambling den. Do-won, with a sly smile, confirmed it was a mistake and promised to make the payment by the end of the day. As the man with glasses was about to move on, the silver-haired guy turned around and mentioned a rumor about the gambling den. All the high-stakes games in the gambling den, which are supposed to be based on trust and fairness, are all a fraud, he said, leaning in toward Do-won. Smiling, Do-won denied the accusation, saying everything in the den was transparent and that he would never do such a thing. He added that if it turned out there was fraud in the gambling den, they could cut off his head. Ju Young listened to this exchange with interest as the meeting continued. We move to the gambling den, where one man tells another to stop gambling as he has lost enough. But the man keeps playing, losing even to the worst hands. Like a true gambler, he promises to make it right in the next round. The room was lively as everyone continued gambling. This is the gambling den shop, located at the Auto Repair Shop Vocational Training Center. Ji Yoon-ho, the den leader, asked Young if it was his first time gambling and proceeded to explain the den's rules. The games were simpler than those in a regular gambling house. Each table had a different type of game, but since it was Young's first time, Ji recommended a simple game of dice. Interested, Young asked if he should play a round. Keeping the conversation going, Young was stalling for time. He couldn't fight anyone without proper justification, but if he found one, no one could stop him. And because Do-won publicly declared that anyone could cut off his head if the gambling den was a scam, Young just needed to find proof of the fraud. After that, he could do whatever he wanted to Do-won. Thinking this, Young slammed his fist onto the dice, breaking it and revealing the magnet inside. Picking up the magnet with his hand, Young looked at the den leader and asked if the whole den was filled with scammers. Under strict management and surveillance, the juvenile prison was supposed to function for the rehabilitation of young offenders. This was what the outside world thought of the prison. But after the appointment of Kwon Chang-sik, the 26th warden, the place turned into a crime hotspot. The income sources operated by the cell leaders, known as shops, within the prison, sent a portion of their profits to the warden. In return, the cell leaders received perks and freedoms far beyond those of regular inmates. Who could have imagined that a criminal cartel was being created inside the juvenile detention center? One of the shops was the gambling den. One of the guys gambling, with a nervous smile, screamed that he was on a roll but had no more money to continue. Grabbing his hair frantically, he remarked that if he could play one more time, he'd definitely win. Suddenly, kneeling on one knee, Do-won approached the guy, telling him there was a way to make that happen. The guy, turning to Do-won, asked how. Do-won replied by offering a loan in exchange for collateral, holding up a contract in his face. Ecstatic, the guy asked where Do-won had been all this time. It was the same for everyone who went there. In the present, holding the magnet, Young confronted the den leader, calling the whole operation a fraud. The den leader approached Young with a psychotic look, asking what he was talking about. Young lifted his hand and shouted, telling everyone about the magnet and how the den was scamming people out of their money. Panic erupted as everyone began to suspect the den's authenticity. Showing the small magnet to the den leader, Young reiterated his question, asking if the magnet was used to make the dice show the desired face. The den leader suddenly struck back, telling everyone that the bead was just a weight used to maintain the die's center of gravity. As Young stood stunned, the leader took out a magnet and asked Young to put the bead close to it. When he did, the bead simply fell to the ground. If it had been magnetized, it would have stuck. Putting some paper clips close to the magnet, the den leader further proved that the magnet was real and the bead was just a weight. The crowd finally calmed down, releasing a collective sigh of relief, and they blamed Young for making a fuss. Sitting down on the floor, the leader asked if they could finally start the game. As Young stood puzzled, Do-won observed everything from afar with a serious face. After a while, the den leader commented about how quick Young was and asked if he had already lost all his money. Young, still with his hand on his head, thought about how things ended up that way. He was sure there was a 50% chance of winning, so how had he lost it all? Was he just unlucky? Interrupting his thoughts, the den leader asked if Young had any more money. Frustrated, Young showed his displeasure. The leader reassured him, saying he was doing well for a novice. Suddenly, a man stood up, screaming that the whole thing was a scam, asking if they thought he was a pushover. Swinging a screwdriver around, he declared he wouldn't give up his money. Suddenly, someone grabbed the man's hand, causing him to drop the screwdriver. It was Do-won. With a cold face, Do-won asked the man why he was crying after losing money when he was happy while winning. He demanded proof that the den was a scam. The man, beaten down, stuttered, saying that the probability didn't add up. With a menacing face, Do-won threatened him, warning him not to cause a fuss without proper evidence or disturb the others. Turning to the crowd, Do-won apologized for the disturbance, asking them to forgive the slight misconduct. As he encouraged everyone to keep enjoying the den, people commented on his confidence while mocking the troublemakers, branding them losers for not winning money. Back at the cell, Gu asked Young about his experience. With a sad expression, Young told them that he had lost all his money but still couldn't find any evidence. He asked how their job went. Rummaging through their pockets, Gu and Ma threw some cards on the ground, saying that everything went according to plan. Gu complimented Young's acting at the den, saying it kept everyone's attention, making it easy to steal during the commotion. Gu then asked what Young thought of his plan, to which Young simply called it embarrassing, while Ma cheered everyone up. Looking at the cards, Gu mentioned the possibility of finding something suspicious if there really was a scam going on. Young agreed, saying there must be something. Picking up the cards, Young examined them closely. Back at the den, the man who had caused the commotion was now begging for forgiveness. Pressing his face to the floor, Do-won accused people like him of giving the den a bad reputation. Pleading, the man said he was in a tight spot. Meanwhile, another man, the den leader who confronted Young earlier, nervously offered Do-won a towel. Grabbing the towel, a bloody Do-won told him not to worry and to keep doing his best for the den. Thinking about Young, Do-won wondered why he was so hostile toward the Heavenly Dragon Gang. Do-won remarked that he didn't care if someone was coming after him, but messing with the den, he couldn't let that go. Back at the cell, Gu finally found something. Lifting up a card, he pointed to the back, showing 2 different sized circles in the regular pattern. That's how the cards are marked, he explained, so you can tell what the card is from the back. Young sighed, finally finding the justification he needed. Meanwhile, at the den, Do-won threatened to chop off Young's head if he caused any more trouble.